Hey, I'm Lauren, certified building biologist, wellness interior designer, and healthy home educator. I want to welcome you to the House Holistics podcast, where we explore how healthy buildings create healthy people. I'll be bringing you life-enhancing conversations with some of the brightest minds in the world. Perhaps your full potential is on the other side of a healthier environment. I'm your host, Lauren Raday. Let's go deeper. A well-designed space with proper lighting, diffusion, color temperature, and natural light, like daylighting, can spark curiosity, evoke drama, or create a sense of calm in our home environments, and really set the mood and elicit a range of positive psychological responses. Could lighting be one of the most important elements in a home? As a wellness interior designer and a building biologist, I believe so. I have the privilege of being here with Mike Teolis, who is the president and co-founder of Colorbeam Lighting. Mike was born and raised and educated in Montreal, Canada. He's a graduate of McGill University, and he began a professional career in banking before transitioning into the audiovisual industry, joining a small AV firm where Mike ultimately served as VP of Sales and Marketing. In that role, Mike led a period of exceptional growth, scaling the organization from $1 million operation with 6 employees in Montreal to 11 offices across Canada, employing 275 people and generating $55 million in annual revenue. In 2013, Mike co-founded an audiovisual company in Montreal that has since grown to 75 employees across Montreal and Toronto. The company specializes in commercial audio, video networking, and security applications, delivering integrated solutions for complex enterprise environments. That AV company was the first in North America to recognize the power requirements of emerging LED lights and how it could be powered on a low voltage infrastructure, allowing them access to the lighting category. Early success with low voltage lighting led them to incorporate Colorbeam lighting and bring the tech, features, and benefits market wide. And this company has since focused on the development of wellness applications in an emerging market. Colorbeam lighting, I'm so excited to talk to you, Mike, today. You guys are delivering a low voltage lighting system that's creating immersive and controllable lighting experiences for residential, commercial, and hospitality spaces. Welcome to the House Holistics podcast, Mike.
Thank you, Lauren. It's my privilege to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to share this space with you. I just learned more about Colorbeam lighting through the Healthy Building Alliance that you and I are both a part of through Brian Johnson. And you delivered a great presentation. And I said this on the HBA call, I'm team incandescent. I think you remember me saying that. But also, I know, especially when it comes to building codes, LEDs, right, are the only option in a lot of situations. So I really wanted to have you on the podcast and talk more about what Colorbeam lighting is. I want you to share about circadian-friendly lighting. So we're going to get into a lot of technical things here. Some of the questions that I have, they're going to maybe get a little bit technical around the low voltage side, the tunability, the controllability, the dimmability side. But I want to start with the basics, Mike. So for somebody that has never heard of circadian-friendly lighting or human-centric lighting, give us the download, please.
Sure. To preface that, what we brought to market about 10 years ago is really the transition in thought from it's not what the fixture looks like in the ceiling anymore. It's what we can do with the light. And we speak about that every day. Whether it's the quality of the light, whether it's tunability, whether that leads to human-centric lighting, which is also circadian rhythm lighting at another level. Those are the things and the technology and the features and benefits that are driving better, healthier light today. So high level, with the advent of LED coming to market about 15 years ago, we really recognized that we didn't need 120 volts to power fixtures anymore. Quite frankly, we are at the forefront of transitioning the architectural lighting industry from high voltage to low voltage for many reasons, but it just makes sense. We just don't need that power consumption. We're pushing almost 2,000 lumens of light over a Cat6 low voltage network wire. So, can someone answer the question, why do we still need high voltage? The answer is we don't. And we're really at the transition of the architectural lighting industry. So the low voltage aspect of what we do means that we're powering those fixtures over a low voltage wire. But when we get into human centric lighting or circadian rhythm applications, it's all about replicating natural sunlight through artificial fixtures. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And that is twofold. One, from a color perspective, which is measured in Kelvin, we also, we want to mimic morning sun through midday and evening light. But that's only part of the story because without the correct LED chipsets that are actually um, pushing the right nanometers and wavelengths, really all we do is shifting in color. So Colorbeam is also at the forefront of developing the right LED chipsets, the quality of the chips that are releasing the nanometers through the blues and the reds that are actually having a positive effect on triggering and suppressing melatonin, which is the catalyst for circadian rhythm lighting, better sleep, and ultimately better health. So, high level, it's a combination of technology, features, and benefits that are intended to drive healthier, better lighting to residential and corporate applications, mainly residential. That's where we spend most of our time in luxury residential space. So that high level is what we're trying to accomplish with circadian rhythm application is driving healthier light to individuals.
Yeah. Circadian friendly lighting is essentially mimicking the sun pattern, right? So you've got the bright hues in the morning, the spectrum changes into the evening, and we know blue light it's inducing alertness. It's allowing us to feel awake and being able to do this podcast first thing in the morning. You're in Canada, I'm in South Carolina, and then as the sun starts to shift, what happens on our body? I mean, Mike, like different synaptic connections turn on. Our endocrine system works. Melatonin kicks in. Hormones start to shift to prepare ourselves for better sleep. So, how would you say that our current lighting systems in maybe a majority of homes are they interrupting people's sleep wake cycle?
Well, they are, and I'm glad you bring that up because the whole concept of blue light is bad, blue light is bad. Blue light is bad if it's coming from the wrong source, from a cheap LED. So, the difference between, I'll use color beam as an example, is the blue light that we are projecting through the day has a positive effect. We actually want blue light through the midday as energizing light that mimics daylight through the midday. So, but again, is that blue light hitting us with the right nanometers and wavelengths? Yes, it is. That's what's going to allow the melatonin to be suppressed through the midday and to be released in the evening. We do that through our processor. So it's based on longitude and latitude of the house anywhere in the world. So through our processor and our patent technology, we know what time the sun rises and sets, no matter where that home is, and that's how the lights transition from morning light. It's actually shifting every millisecond. You don't recognize it visually, but it's mimicking the transition of natural sunlight through the day. So to get back to the blue light, yes, we want blue light at the right time, and we want the right quantity of it with the right spec is what we're trying to accomplish. So, do people have the wrong lighting in their home? Yeah, unfortunately, if you go buy a $3 LED at Home Depot, chances are that you've got a 5,000 Kelvin fixture that's in your house from morning to night, and it's obviously not a quality fixture. It doesn't bring anything to the design aspect of the home. but it's suppressing melatonin 24 hours a day, which prohibits what we're trying to accomplish in the evening, which is the release of melatonin.
Yeah, light is our main driver of our entire circadian system. Starts in the brain and then it regulates our physiological systems all throughout the body. And if we don't have the right light exposure, then that can disrupt everything about our day. Better daylight exposure, improved night at sleep. Better sleep, higher daytime focus and productivity. So I think circadian friendly lighting is really important to not disrupt this natural cycle. Because before homes, we were outside all the time. We were on the earth. We were gardening. We were harvesting animals. We were noticing the journey of the sun. And that kind of dictated what our next step was. Oh, the sun's going down. It's time for sleep. My body already knows that. And so when we're in these shells today, uh, we often don't even know what time of day it was. I'll share a funny story with you, Mike. So I was homeschooled until about 10th grade, and I went into the public school system 10th, 11th, and 12th. And I remember walking into that government school building and thinking, where are the windows? Why is it so dark in here? What time of day is it? I just was so disoriented because it was the same Kelvin throughout the entire building. It didn't shift, it didn't change. And so when I left school, I remember feeling really almost sleepy and groggy and confused because I wasn't exposed to the right type of light at the right time of day. And I really see color beam lighting and circadian friendly sources hugely beneficial in school buildings, government buildings, hospitality spaces. I mean, we see it too now in airplanes, right? The kind of shift the last couple years. Um, so give us kind of the layout though, Mike. Is listeners are probably like, okay, is this a light bulb I screw into my existing socket? Is this a whole infrastructure setup? Help listeners understand what the application of color beam circadian lighting in a home.
So the back end infrastructure, when we talk about the low voltage side, um, picture what we would typically have today is an electrical panel with a breaker, and you've got a high voltage wire that's going to run to 4, 6, 10 fixtures throughout the house. And we'll call that a load or a zone. So the low voltage infrastructure now basically stops high voltage, let's call it at the mechanical room, where we install an enclosure that houses low voltage devices, power supplies, and controllers. So the only high voltage that is required from an electrical standpoint is bringing power to that rack or that enclosure, which houses these devices. At the enclosure, everything is now fed with Cat6 wire emanating from the decoders that are in the enclosure. And that low voltage Cat6 wire is what's powering fixtures. And we daisy chain one fixture to another with nothing more than a low voltage Cat6 wire. So we always say that high voltage now stops at the enclosure, which let's call it the mechanical room or a central location in the house. That is a number one contributor to us mitigating and eliminating the EMF. So from an
Hmm.
EMF standpoint, that is the big differentiator with Colorbeam is that high voltage now stops at a local mechanical room. From a fixture perspective, we do two categories of lighting that actually complement each other. So the first one, we are not a screw-in light bulb because we're talking about much higher quality. It's a solid state fixture. That fixture is basically comprised of three components, which is the backhand, traditional backhand in the ceiling, the trim, which is the decorative aspect, and it's got a heat diffuser or a that houses the actual chipset that we call the Heka chipset, which are the LEDs in the fixture. So it's definitely not a screw and light bulb. Call it a solid state fixture, and those fixtures are powered over Cat6. The other component we do is what we call linear and tape light. So that is going to be traditionally your secondary layer of light, which is in some cases going to be your coves, your under cabinet, your toe kick. We'll call more of an indirect light source. The two go hand in hand because when you're doing a true circadian rhythm lighting design, lights cannot simply come from above head because when you're going through the cycle of sun, you've got the sun coming at you from different levels. Morning light obviously being horizontal, and you got vertical light through the midday. So it's a combination of lights above head and linear, which may be in the wall. It could be your coves, it could be directs. All of those things and create the most effective circadian rhythm lighting solution, design, whatever you want to call it.
Now, do you guys not install your product if a client wasn't wanting to install the the next layer? So, we've got our general, then we've got our accent, and then we've got our task lighting. So, if a client wasn't willing to install that second layer, which I kind of call wall washing, because you're right, the sun is not stagnant, it's moving throughout our spaces. And that's where sconces are really important, or decorative lighting that's on the wall, not just overhead. So my question is, are you guys flexible if somebody doesn't want to install that kind of secondary layer, or are you really like, no, this is important, and here's why?
Well, first of all, we're the manufacturer, so we can't control what an end user is going to want to do or not do. That's usually decided by the homeowner and the reseller channel that we engage with. We do lighting design at Colorbeam. That's a big differentiator. So we'll get into the details that the customer wants, but to answer your question, no, we're not going to prohibit the system because there's a lot of benefits coming just from recessed lighting in itself,
Right.
whether it's the wavelengths, the tunability aspect, whether it's the CRI, whether it's making the space look remarkable with better lighting. You as an interior designer or others, you're picking out fabrics, you're picking out furniture based on color, and you've got a $4 wafer light from Home Depot, and all of a sudden that couch looks completely different than what the intent was from a design perspective. So just that alone, quality lighting in the home brings an added aspect of wellness and design to the home, regardless of the circadian rhythm application or not. So there's a lot of value beyond circadian rhythm lighting in what we do.
Hmm. Okay. I'd love to hear more specifics about your CRI in your system. So, your color rendering index. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so our fixtures are anywhere from 90 to 95 plus on the CRI, which is a vague number. But our R9, for those that know a little bit, and that's not my expertise, but our R9 value is actually 97 CRI. So we're approaching, if not well exceeding, museum quality light. That means that we are rendering the best example of explaining CRI is how well does the artificial fixture reproduce colors as they would be seen under natural sunlight. So a poor quality fixture, a low CRI will make objects look very different under artificial light. High quality fixture will make those objects, whether it's the color on the walls, floor, countertops, furniture, that they will look as they would be seen under natural sunlight. So that's a big component of what we do is the quality of the fixtures themselves and the chips.
Haven't we all been there, especially interior designers that are listening to this? We've been in the fabric store, we specify a fabric, it looks one way in the store, we take it to the client's house, and it is shockingly a different color. I mean, this phenomenon is really interesting to me. And then even when you take that same fabric outside, it looks like a third color. It's fascinating too what all the different types of lighting are doing to contribute to what we see. It's really interesting.
And, you guys are working on sophisticated homes. They got nice furnishings. Um, what quality light does is allow your vision to come to light. No pun intended. So that's, that's has nothing to do with circadian rhythm lighting or others. That is just from a quality of light and reproducing colors the way they're intended to be seen.
Mhm. Now, your system can be hardwired, correct?
Everything we do is hardwired. We don't do anything that is not hardwired. So, from a wellness perspective, our fixtures, there's no wireless communication in our protocol. We're not a controls manufacturer, so we are a lighting manufacturer. So, from a controls perspective, they would come from keypads on the wall that come from providing controls manufacturers in our industry. um, you cannot put what we do on a traditional switch or a dimmer because it defeats the whole purpose of recalling specific Kelvin settings or circadian lighting applications. So they must go on a keypad that has 4 or 6 or 8 button presses. Those button presses get programmed to give the customer the ability to recall anything they want, whether that's a Kelvin, whether it's a scene, whether it's a dim level. So there's a lot of sophistication in it beyond just a keypad on or not a keypad, but a dimmer or a switch. Those keypads are all wired as well. So whether it's pictures themselves or the keypads in our world today, everything is a wired infrastructure.
Mhm. Well, you just got the attention of a lot of, electromagnetic radiation fans because that's a big question is this a smart system? A lot of circadian friendly lighting hasn't quite crossed that bridge towards a low voltage system or to a hardwired system. A lot of it is still synced smartly, running on Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And for the homes that I'm interested in creating, and for a lot of the listeners to this podcast, we don't want Bluetooth. We don't want Wi-Fi. We want an option that is hardwired.
Yeah, and that was made clear to us in our partnership with Brian and
Yep.
Synergy 360. Now, everything that's one of the things that further got his attention to Colorbeam was not only what we were doing on the circadian side, but the low voltage infrastructure was the big one with the EMF. And subsequently, when we dove into controls and knowing that everything was a wired solution, that just brought added value to the whole solution for him and you and everyone that we're speaking to today in the wellness space.
Mhm. Someone might have a question of, okay, low voltage. You guys keep saying low voltage, but what does that really mean compared to high voltage? Can we bring it really basic?
Sure. So if we go back to traditional infrastructure, you've got your electrical panel, you got a breaker, and you got a high voltage wire going to lights. That is your traditional 120 volt power. It's it's what we call high voltage. What we do is step down that high voltage to a low voltage infrastructure through these devices that we put into that enclosure. So we are now powering lighting over what we call a 48 volt infrastructure. And off of those devices, because it's only 48 volt, we are using that low voltage Cat6 wire. So everything gets stepped down from 120 volts to 48 volts in that enclosure, which is centrally located. And then all we use is low voltage wiring to power the fixtures. So the only low volt or the only wires you have running through the house now for color beam lighting is all Cat6 rather than 120 volt high voltage wire that's propagating um, EMF and dirty electricity throughout the house. So that gets mitigated at the enclosure, and everything gets brought down to a low voltage 48 volt centrally at the enclosure.
Mhm. I was going to ask you about microsurge electrical pollution or MEP. Have you all been able to measure and show the differences? Maybe Brian has been able to
Yeah,
come to the project.
we'll rely on Brian. We're working with Brian today on those white papers and those measures. One of the things that Brian has measured, and I guess he couldn't believe it when he first did, is the third pillar. We broken down what we do into the three pillars of wellness lighting. That third pillar is flicker, which is a big
Yes.
topic of
Huge.
conversation, and using some of the most sophisticated measuring tools that Brian and others use, they could not even measure flicker off of our devices. And that was a huge
Amazing.
thing for him, is eliminating that flicker component. We do that mainly by eliminating the use of electronic dimmers and switches. So because our infrastructure is low voltage and more importantly it's digital, we're dimming what we call on a digital infrastructure, which is DMX, so we can one dim flawlessly to zero, flicker free, which just from a design perspective is a big thing. You don't want to, when you look at cheap lights and cheap devices, you'd always get flicker maybe at 20% dim level, 10%. You'd start seeing flicker. Oh, I can't dim any lower because now the lights are driving me nuts. They're strobing. I feel like I'm in a club. Exactly. So we now dim flawlessly basically to zero until the lights turn off, until those chips turn off flicker free.
Big deal. The flicker element is a huge component of this mic.
It absolutely is, and we presented to the AIA in New York a couple weeks ago, and Will, I don't know if he actually joined us, our marketing young smart kid, sharp kid. He says, we were in a hotel room, and I said, I wish there was a way that we could show what we're talking about as far as flicker and eliminating flicker. And he says, well, so he took a video of just the light that was in our hotel room, and then he took another video with the video sped up in frames, and you actually, what we was imperceivable from the eye, when it was sped up, you could actually see what the brain sees versus what the eye sees, and it was remarkable. And when I actually made that presentation the next day to the architect, I said, "Well, I didn't even know that existed." So it's not just what the eye is picking up; it's beyond that. In some cases, the eye isn't picking up the flicker, but everything else in our head is, and that's what's causing us health issues as well.
Our skin also picks it up. So, it being the largest organ, our eyes don't even have to experience flicker. Our body knows there is a disruption in the environment. It's the whole system that knows. It's incredible how powerful we are when we're in an environment that is disruptive or feels chaotic. For listeners, if you've never seen or experienced flicker, I know you have. It feels like an agitation. It almost feels kind of like an annoyance, an underlying annoyance. I spoke maybe about a month and a half ago at a arboretum, a garden on healthy homes, and there was this light bulb that just, I mean, it's an obvious just flicker, and it's right above the speaker's head, and so, I mean, I would love to be able to say, "Hey, why don't you just use all color beam technology to just fix this issue?" Because it's really important even when it comes to speakers, because there's typically lights that are highlighting speakers, and if those are flickering or they're not of a high quality, that's going to be a big distraction for listeners.
Yeah, and we've the more we dive into this wellness space, the more we're excited about it because, as I told Brian, I said, no, it's one thing to sell a luxury good to a homeowner or to a venue manager that has a sense of, hey, the room looks cool, to now really meeting people's wellness applications and delivering something that makes people feel better from a health perspective. So lighting is quite exciting for us. So, if you go back to our early days and when we came to market, we didn't even know this market existed till a year and a half ago when I met Brian. And it was really a catalyst for us to say, hey, what we've been doing, we didn't even know applied to a market space that is really looking for something because they're very ill affected to flicker and all the things that we're talking about today in EMF. So it's kind of cool that for us, these two worlds are coming together from a technology and a health benefit perspective. And, you know, that it's been really revolutionary for us to bring healthier solutions to the lighting industry and transition it.
Well, we are glad you're here. And we're glad that you said yes to pursuing a different rhythm, even in your business. But you have the tech side understood. I feel like that would probably be the biggest hurdle for most people. And then, you're picking up what you need to pick up along the way, especially collaborating with the Brian Johnson. But tell me, Mike, a little bit too about how dimmers can create more flicker. And that's something that is big in the interior design world. Every designer and architect wants, we all want to dim our lights because we're eliciting a mood in our rooms. So when you say, hey, like dimmers can actually contribute to a higher electromagnetic radiation pollution in your environment, that's often met with, no, no way. Like, I love my dimmer. It's fine. Can you speak to that?
Well, without getting into the weeds, because that's not my electrical background, but it's always been an incompatibility between the dimmer and the fixture. And if you go
Yes.
back a few years and you had the early AV companies that were coming to market with lighting, they'd have test benches full of fixtures and dimmers to try to figure out what worked with each other. And then you got, companies like Vantage Controls that eventually said, "Hey, we gotta list out everything that actually works. We're gonna vet dimming modules with our fixtures so that resellers know exactly what they're getting into." So it is a wild west, and dimmers are getting better from an electrical perspective and a quality perspective, but it's always been the incompatibility between, and from a quality perspective and the electronics that are in there, how well they can modulate that pulse so that lights don't flicker at 20% or 15%. So that's always been the biggest challenge with dimming, really comes from the incompatibility of the dimming and the fixtures. Do they work well together? To what level do they work well together?
Hmm. Okay. Great. I don't know if you remember meeting my friend Zara Zakata. Actually, Dakota, you might not have met her, but she was on one of your job sites in one of Brian's projects, maybe in Arizona or California. She did some traveling, so I'm not sure which one she was on. But she was telling me about how she wasn't quite sure what all your systems would look like with all the wires, your bays, like where you're storing it, and she kind of thought it would be an EMF nightmare. But then when she saw it, she just said it was a work of art. So not only was it low EMF, but whatever you call it, your bay of your wall of panels and systems, she was so impressed, and she really said it was like art.
Mm, That's in That's the artwork that some of our resellers, like we sell through traditionally today, AV installers. So they're traditionally the ones that, from a business model, when we started Colorbeam, it was actually to allow the AV integrators of the world that are doing audio and video and security and all the other low voltage technology that typically goes into a home. They could now get into the lighting space because lighting was now low voltage and they are low voltage. So a lot of these guys take a lot of pride in how they wire those enclosures and the neatness of the wiring and how they tie wrap things together. So in a lot of cases, the back end looks even better than the front end. But having said that, we've actually migrated to a new infrastructure today that is not that what we were doing is going away, but it complements what we were doing. So instead of having these quite large wall enclosures that house these electronics, we've now gone to another format. So it's actually a vertical tower, which is what AV integrators install every day with rack mount devices, as we call it. So now we're eliminating the need for wall space in the house. One of the things that we notice is no matter how big the home is, there always seems to be a premium on wall space, and no one wants to give up wall space. So now our devices go vertically into a rack, so it eliminates the need for wall space. The end result, the technology is identical. So it just gives flexibility for the homeowner and the installer to pick the right solution based on the application, the type of home, the space that they're given to work with. So we got just a little bit more flexibility with that going on.
And there are photos on your website of this rack system, so listeners can go see what we're talking about.
Yeah, from a website perspective, I'm glad you bring that up because we are under a massive, not necessarily rebranding, but repositioning of Colorbeam. What you're going to see from our website in the next couple weeks is all focused and based on wellness. A lot of white papers, a lot of very meaningful information on Flickr, on EMF, on what we're doing from a circadian rhythm lighting perspective. So I don't think that was well enough communicated in the past because that's not who we were as a company. And as we transition more and more to the wellness space, people that are looking for the right information are going to find everything they're looking for on our website. So thanks for bringing that up. Actually, I wouldn't have brought that up, but it's just, I'm not going to call it as a rebranding, but a repositioning of our solution for wellness applications.
Okay, so stay tuned for a couple weeks when you have that relaunch with your website.
If
Got it.
anyone's, yeah, and if you or anyone are looking for specific documentation, please reach out because a lot of the documentation is ready. It's just not ready to be thrown into a website and having a hodgepodge of look and feels to the website, but the information is ready to be shared.
Okay, it's fabulous, Mike. We've covered low voltage, we've covered controllability, we've covered dimmability. I'd like to talk about tunability. Can a homeowner, if they don't want the whole rhythm of the sun operating in their house, can they just turn it to a certain Kelvin at any time of day? Or can they turn the whole system off? Can you talk more about tunability?
Absolutely, and thanks for bringing that up. So tunability is the precursor to circadian rhythm lighting, but both can live as separate entities. So tunability just allows the homeowner to select any Kelvin at any time and have any dim level associated with the look and feel that they're trying to create. If we compare that to warm to dim or dim to warm, depending on who's calling you what, that's another technology in lighting that's been around for a while. It usually has a tunable range of 1800 to 3000. But if I want 1800 Kelvin, which is a very warm, incandescent feel, I got to bring that dim level down to 5%. If I want 3000 Kelvin, I got to be at 100%. Tunability in itself provides the homeowner with way more flexibility because they can have any Kelvin through the range of the chipsets that we offer at any level. So, to come back to, hey, maybe I want 2200 Kelvin, but I don't want to be at 10% dim to get that. So to answer your question, yes, through programming, they can just have toggles. They can have different Kelvin settings. They can have different scene settings where they're going to match their downlights with their um, linear light if there's linear light in the home. So there's a flexibility. We offer three different chipsets. So if we're just talking about tunability, we have a chipset that ranges from 1800 Kelvin to 4000. We have another one that's 2700 to 6500. But in most cases, in all cases, when we're talking about wellness applications, the chipset that we developed specifically for wellness is what we call our HECA chipset. And that the range is 2200 Kelvin to 5000. The reason that is the range is we spent almost 3 years working with some of the leading circadian biologists in the world, one of them out of Australia. And the most effective tunable range that is actually going to have an effect on triggering and suppressing melatonin is 2200 to 5000. What that basically is saying is anything below 2200 or above 5000 is really not going to have any positive effect on what we're trying to do in Colorbeam world specifically to triggering and suppressing melatonin. We're not getting into red light therapy. We're not looking for 1,000 nanometer red light therapy applications. That's not what we do. So when we talk about specifically triggering and suppressing melatonin, that chipset offers a 2200 to 5000 Kelvin tunable range with the required nanometers of 480, 450, 480 to 680 through the reds to actually have the positive effect we're looking to deliver.
Mhm. Incredible. I'm a 2700 Kelvin kind of gal. So
Sure.
if can the chips be interchangeable? Like if all of a sudden I change my mind, can I interchange those chips or are they always living in the system?
No, it would be quite an endeavor. I mean, technically, yes, the reseller could go and solder new chipsets, but it's not something that we would recommend. So, um, again, with anyone who's looking for a wellness solution, you would just have that 22 to 5000 chipset. But again, if you want 2700 and you want to live with 2700, then that's what you would have morning, day, and night. But that 2700 through the rain, if we're talking about circadian rhythm lighting, at 27 in the morning, the lights come on in the morning at a preset that is best mimicking natural sunlight at that time of day. So if I turn the lights on at 6 in the morning, I would get 2200 Kelvin, which is the warmest setting. And if I turn the lights on at 2 in the afternoon, I'd have 5000 Kelvin. And then from 5000, it would migrate back down to 2200 in the evening. And just so in some cases, to the opposite of what you're asking me, some customers just live with the natural cycle. And that's, regardless of what time of day they're going to turn the lights on, it'll come on at its closest setting to mimic natural sunlight at that time of day. And it'll just transition for the rest of the day until they shut the lights off at night. And then, depending on what time in the morning they turn the lights on, it'll come on again at its closest preset to natural sunlight.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, Mike. Well, to wrap up our interview today, I want to finish with a few research facts that will back up this whole interview. Are you cool with that? Can I read a few
Sure.
comments on research? Okay, about lighting. So, research has found that in well daylit workplace environments, productivity is higher and sales increase. They also found that students in classrooms that have appropriate light perform better. Then they found that students and also have less dental decay in environments that are appropriately lit, which is really interesting. So, quality daylighting compared to students that had poor lighting conditions. And I don't know if you heard about the Hishang Mahone group. Well, they conducted one of the most famous daylighting studies in the late 90s in the US. And they found that students in classrooms with the most daylight, the most appropriate daylight, progressed 20 to 26% faster in math and reading than those that had inappropriate light. They also found that retail stores that had skylights, sales were 40% higher 40% higher than stores that didn't have skylights. And it just goes to show how important light is for our dental health, to our comprehension, to our sales. I mean, it just goes to show just how much we need to be following the rhythm of the sun outside and inside. So, Mike, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I know you are very busy, you are traveling a lot. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and to educate the House Holistics audience. Is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners today?
Um, No, I think we've covered everything. I think you did a fantastic job in covering, and you and I didn't even have a conversation. So the fact that we reviewed everything in detail is a credit to you. And anytime you want to have me on, Lauren, it was a pleasure. And I look forward to perhaps the next occasion where we can get together and talk about lighting and how we can drive wellness benefits to your audience and our customers.
Fabulous, Mike. Well, thank you so much. And I'm very excited to see where Colorbeam lighting is in another year and a half. I'm sure so much is going to be evolving in your corner of the world. So until then, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Have a great day.